Okay, so I'm going to talk about flat hunting today. It, I would say it was probably my biggest worry before I moved here. Prior to moving to London, I obviously, being a project manager for a living, I try to manage the hell out of planning for the move. And I thought that, if I could secure a place to live, maybe a job and like a cell phone number before I came, that'd be really good. But none of those things happened. But what I did do was I researched online. So I think I Googled like websites to look for flats in London or something like that. And I just read a whole bunch of forums, and a lot of the places were talking about how you have to go through all these flat sharing websites to find a flatmate or roommate or whatever. Or you can go through agents and private. I just didn't really understand any of those words and what they really meant. Um, but yeah, I what I ended up doing was after I kind of did all the research, I was getting frustrated, just being like, I don't even know if the prices I'm looking at are decent. Like, is that too much, too little? Is that neighborhood nice? Is it a safe place? How many flatmates is too many? I just had no idea. So I ended up just getting like an Airbnb room, in like a random part of town, really, and stayed there for a week. So I basically just gave myself 7 days to find a flat to live in. So as soon as I came to London, spent the first 7 days just making appointments to go see places, like 7 to 10 places a day. And I was getting lost all the time. Like, I had no idea how the tube system worked. People think it's really simple, and I now know it's super simple. But it's really overwhelming when you first see the tube map of London, especially coming from Toronto, where there's like two subway lines, like a U and a straight line. That's it. Here, there's like I don't even know how many lines, and then if you include like the overground and all the trains and everything, it's madness. So I was getting lost and just frustrated, and I was tired of the rain the first week, and I was exhausted. So after looking at so many different places in all different parts of town, it all just kind of became the same. And on my last day of looking around, I was like, you know what? Instead of extending my Airbnb room for another week, I'm just gonna say yes to the next place that looks decent, looks clean, looks big enough for me, and I'm just gonna take it. So um, that's what I ended up doing, and I kind of ended up settling for a place that I wasn't very happy with, and I got roped into a 6 month contract, which for here is kind of a longer term contract than most places. So when I was in Toronto for the past like almost 10 years, I've lived on my own, like in a bachelor apartment by myself, and that's just the way that I really prefer to live right now. And I haven't lived with anyone really. So I thought, obviously there's no point of looking for a one bedroom because A, it's going to be impossible to afford, and B, there just isn't many one bedrooms out in London. So I thought maybe if I had like one flatmate and if I can live in like a condo, stainless steel appliances, it's basically what I'm used to in Toronto, I thought I'd be grand. That's really hard to find. So a place that I almost said yes to was in this like hospital that got converted into a bunch of like flats, apartments. But the guy that lived there, it would have been like a sharing just one flatmate, and the kitchen was massive, and the price was decent, but he's a little bit creepy, like he would totally install cameras in your bathroom creepy, so I just didn't say yes. Um, but I ended up living in a house, which wasn't really what I wanted, and there was like five other people that lived in that house, and me being naive, I was like, oh, maybe it'll be like an episode of Friends and we can all just become best friends and hang out all together all the time. No. It was, yeah, nothing like that at all. Like, a couple of the people were really cool. One was an Australian girl, the other guy was from Northern Ireland. They were cool, but I didn't really see them very often. And then there was an Italian guy who was a big, big, big mess. And there was a French guy that was just like an inconsiderate asshole, basically. And then the other one was basically the French guy's like regular chick that came around like every day. So it wasn't the ideal situation. And then the French guy started like an ant problem because he just wouldn't clean up after himself. So I ended up leaving a bit early. So I got roped into a 6 month contract there. I think a lot of places in London are generally like the 3 months. Some of them are 6 months. It's really rare to see like a 1 year contract. It's very different from like Toronto, where I come from, where if you go look for a place, they're like, well, you move in on the first date of whatever month, and you pay first and last month's rent for a 1 year lease generally. So here you still pay a first and last month's rent, or really first month and security deposit, but it's like 3 months or 6 month contract. Um, okay, so websites I looked at. I think Move Flat, flatshare.co.uk. Spare Room is a very popular one. It's basically people that, you can be the person that lives in a flat that needs a roommate, or you can be a person that's looking to find a room. So there's, people, it's kind of like Craigslist, but not as like shady. People find each other. They have all these like, it's not like a dating system, but they have these meetups where you can go meet potential flatmates and get to know each other and whatever. So most of the places that I looked at were from Spare Room, and a lot of the listings on Spare Room are actually not private listings. Like, you'll see listings that are either like, it'll say private/landlord, or it'll say agent or agency. And back home, I always thought that agents were really just, they're real estate agents. They're used for buying places. Like, why would I like pay somebody to find a rental? But London, the rental market is so competitive that I think most people just are used to using agents now, and a lot of owners or landlords are just used to just hiring an agency and being like, go find somebody, and then I'm just gonna fuck off and live somewhere else. A lot of the landlords in London, I think, not a lot, but some of them in certain areas especially, are people that live abroad that just invested in the place, and then they just hire an agency to maintain it. So I would say don't be afraid of the whole, if it says agent or agency, but keep in mind that the renter is usually the person that pays for the fee. So our agent's fee was like £180, which is like $300, which is a lot just to like do all the paperwork, but it's just kind of the cost of doing things around here. Or you might get lucky and just find a place that's very privately done, that whatever. Because the first place that I lived in, that house with like 6 people, was done through the actual house owner, who just owned the house and like a bunch of other houses, and so he just kind of, managed it. So I didn't have to pay for that. And another good thing about the house that I lived in was all the bills were included. So you'll be surprised to know that most of the rental places here the bills are not included. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Like in Toronto, if I lived in an apartment building, then the building owner or the building manager just kind of divides up the whole building's bills, like the cable, not the cable, sorry, the water, the heat, the electricity, whatever, and then just kind of charge the average for all the people, and then they include it in your rent. But here, because a particular 3-floor house could be divided into 3 separate flats, so when you like walk into the front door of the building, of the house, there's like a door that leads into the first floor flat, which has a couple bedrooms. You go up the stairs, another door leads into a second floor apartment, and then so on and so on. So, you wouldn't necessarily want to have to pay the divvied up amount for the whole house if, let's say, you and your flatmate are never there, and then your third floor is full of people all the time. It's just not fair. So everybody just kind of gets their own meter set up and everything. So if you don't have all of your bills included, you end up paying, your actual rent, the water, electricity, the heat, council tax, which is like property tax, and the renter usually pays for that. There's TV tax. There's probably a couple other things, but you end up just paying like so much bills on top that even if your rent is like 500, you're paying like 7 or 750. Where was I gonna go with that thought? Airbnb, agency. Oh, so also when you're looking at websites, you'll notice that sometimes, not all the time, it'll say like blah 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 amount PW or PM, and I was like, what is that? But basically it says PW is per week and PM is per month, and it kind of baffled my mind that I was like, why would you bother posting like a per week price? I thought it was just kind of to try to make it seem like, oh, your flat's a little bit cheaper than it actually is. But if you calculate it times by 4, it's really times by 52 divided by 12 to get the exact amount. But a lot of places here, if it's not like a 3 or 6 month contract, it's like a 5 week or an 8 week contract, or it's like a short term thing. So you just pay per week, like every Sunday or something, with like a 5 week or 6 week guarantee that you're going to stay there with a 1 week's notice and yada yada yada. So a lot of places do charge you per week, which is funny because salary jobs pay monthly here instead of every 2 weeks. So if you get paid once a month and you pay rent 4 times a month, by your last week of the month, like, and if you didn't budget properly, you're fucked. I don't really know how people do it. But anyways, what else? So when I first came also, I would see all these descriptions on the online websites that says like flat for sharing or like house or new build or ex-council, things like that. And I were like, okay, what do these all different things mean? And basically, a flat is, you can call anything a flat. If you live in a house, you can call that a flat, basically. Or you can call your room a flat. You can call an apartment a flat. It's kind of just a place. Like, you know how in North America we call everything an apartment. Even if you live on like a second floor of a house, you might just call that like, my apartment is the top floor of a house. And houses here are so rarely detached because it's a massive city, but there's also so many people that live here. And a lot of these places are quite old. So I think back in the day when there was all these like war and bombing and things happening, and they had to kind of build places for the masses very quickly, they ended up building a lot of kind of blocks and blocks of houses. It's basically not even like semi-detached. It's completely attached. Like there's like 20 houses all attached to each other in a massive row on a street. It could just really be like one long, I think New York has things like that. It's like, those walk-ups, like brownstones, but they're all attached in a block. So you can live in like a block of a flat, block of flats. And a new build is their way of saying like a condo. I think any building or apartment or a condo style living that was built in the last like 5-10 years is considered a new build. Like I live in a new build now. And here people don't understand the word condo. I was like, yeah, I live in a condominium. They're like, what's that? So they call it a new build. A council estate or ex-council or things like that it's like basically co-op housing. But not everybody that lives in council estates here are people that are on like welfare or things like that. It's just basically, I think, if they're actual council estates, I'm sure you have to apply and prove your income and whatever to kind of get the government helping. But if they're like ex-estate, it's basically like a developer came and bought it from the government and started renting it out. So it might look like co-op housing, but it's not. And a lot of the ex-council estates are like they've been refurbished quite a bit and whatever. So you could end up in one of those. And it's not necessarily in like a shady area at all. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. I think back when, all that, the whole bombing and stuff were happening in London, when they were building up all these houses and flats and estates really quickly, they had to kind of build these council estates everywhere. They weren't discriminating between like, oh yeah, if you go to like Chelsea, there's not going to be an estate. Like there totally is. You could have like an 18 million pound flat and literally across the street have like a row of council estates. And that's just kind of how it is in every neighborhood. So you could potentially say that you live in a really nice neighborhood and kind of still live in like a council flat or something. Or you can say you live in a what's so-and-so called ghetto area, but you could live in a really nice place. Neighborhoods are another different video that I can get into. But anyway, I'll go on to tips, I guess. I'm going to start just babbling on. I would say for sure, if you're moving here, before moving here, secure yourself something very short term. Like, I thought about getting like a 1 or 3 month contract at a place before I came, but then there was things like, how do I trust the people that I'm sending money to online? I didn't know anybody here, so I couldn't like ask them to go check it out. How do you trust the pictures? Whatever. So I think, I mean, my tip to any of my friends when they talk about coming is like, just do what I did and just get an Airbnb or stay at a hostel. And the cost of doing that actually is better off than if you were to have gotten stuck somewhere that's like really shitty for like 3 or 6 months. Um, Speaking of 3 or 6 months, after your short term at Airbnb apartments or whatever hostels, try to make sure that your first contract that you sign anywhere, wherever it is a shorter one. So like a 3 month contract or like a 5 week contract or something, because pretty much guarantee you're not going to find A, the neighborhood that you love at your first try, and B, the kind of living situation that you love on your first try. Like, I thought maybe I was okay with the house. I'm not. Maybe I thought, I was okay with a bunch of roommates. I'm not. So, now that I've been here for almost a year, after my first 6 months, I ended up moving here, and I live in a new build now with one flatmate, which is exactly what I wanted before I came here. But I wouldn't have been able to find this place really on my own without any of the knowledge that I didn't have at the time. I think I wouldn't appreciate it as much as I do now. So yeah, definitely, try living in a place for a shorter period of time if you can. And I would say, I mean, a lot of people kind of, because when they first get here, if they don't know anybody like I didn't, they tend to want to stick together. So like Canadians with Canadians and Americans with Americans or whatever. But I would honestly say like it might be beneficial for you to live with either like British people that are from London or people that have lived in the city for a long time, because that way, even if you don't necessarily become best friends with your flatmate or your flatmates, it's a lot easier to like ask questions about, oh, I want to go try this today. What do you think? Or just, even asking directions and just getting advice and tips and things like that. It's actually really helpful, rather than kind of living with a whole bunch of people that may also be new or maybe just like, here for a short period of time or something. Yeah, it's totally normal for your first year to live in like 3 or 4 different places. I know tons of people that have done that. So don't be like thinking that you're weird if you move around a lot, because a lot of people move around a lot, especially in their first year of being in London, because it's just impossible to be able to tell where you like to live. And London is so, so big. I'm going to say this a lot, but London is a really massive city. It's like, I might be exaggerating, but I think it's like 10 or 15 times bigger than like downtown Toronto. What else? Make sure to try to arrange as many viewings in a day as possible, or like on like a weekend, because so in Toronto, if you go look at a place, you might go look at it on like a Tuesday, you might think about it, Wednesday go talk to them, and then like on a Saturday you might go sign papers or whatever. Here, you go see a place, you like it, you give them money that day, you move in the next day. Like it's so quickly. It's so rare that you would even, look at a place on a Monday and move in like 2 weeks later. Like it's generally you move in that week. It's really quick, because I think a lot of times, especially if it's like a 3 month contract, they only really need like a week or two's notice before you move out. So if the previous person only gave like a week's notice, then the landlord has to find somebody immediately. So generally, if you're gonna go see a place, there's probably like 6 other people that are seeing the same place that day. So if you like the place, give your check immediately. Which is why I say see as many places in a day as possible, so that you can kind of get your bearing, and then if you need that time, then at least you've seen like 6 or 7 that day, and you can make a choice the next day or something. And try to bring like your bank details, or I didn't have a bank when I first came here, so I just gave them like a wad of cash. Yeah, I mean you do what you can, but I would probably avoid doing, unless it's like a legit, and you know these people, or they're like legit business or whatever, avoid doing like a direct deposit right away, just for safety reasons, and you just never know. And another big tip is try to get a place that's all bills included if you can. My last place was, this place is not. Like this place, my flatmate and I pay like the rent to our landlord, and then we pay all of our bills outside of that. So you have to register for all of your own like gas meter and water and things like that in the building. Yeah. I think I've talked enough about flat hunting. It's not fun, in my opinion. It's like a fucking headache. When I was looking for this place, I had to do it at work and after work in the morning. I downloaded all the apps and, on the bus to work, I was frantically searching for a place to live. It's really, really stressful. But once you find a good place, you really do appreciate it, and you have to like the neighborhood, go see it during the day and at night to make sure that you're okay with the neighborhood, get to know your neighbors, yada, 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 things like that. Anyways, yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm not an expert at this at all. I've only moved twice really, if I count an Airbnb place, since I've been here. I've only been here for almost a year, so yeah, all personal opinion, not an expert here. Okay, that's it. Bye.